I worked 2 jobs to pay the household bills. I finished the mortgage, and my unemployed son-in-law said, "Great, now go live in the dump." My daughter agreed. "You're a burden, Mom." When I said 5 words, they went pale. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought the happiest day of my life would turn into the most devastating one in just a matter of minutes. At 64, I had finally done it. After working 2 jobs for 7 years straight, I had paid off the mortgage on our little house on Maple Street, the same house where I raised Jovie as a single mother, where she brought Tyson home for the first time, and where we had supposedly been living as a family. The letter from the bank arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. My hands were shaking as I opened it, not from fear this time, but from pure relief. "Congratulations, Mrs. Lucille Anderson. Your mortgage has been paid in full." I must have read those words 20 times before they really sank in. I rushed to the kitchen where Jovie was making coffee, and Tyson was sprawled across the couch watching TV, like he did every morning since he lost his job 8 months ago. Well, lost might be too generous. He was fired for showing up late too many times. "Jovie, honey," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "Look at this. We did it. The house is finally paid off." Jovie glanced at the letter over her coffee mug, her expression flat. No smile, no congratulations, nothing. Just that same distant look she'd been giving me for months. "Great, Mom. That's nice." Nice? 7 years of getting up at 4 a.m. to clean office buildings before my shift at the nursing home, and she calls it nice? I felt my chest tighten, but I pushed down the disappointment. Maybe she was just tired. Tyson looked up from the TV with that smirk I'd grown to hate. He was a tall, skinny man with greasy hair that always looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, which most days he had. Well, look who finally finished paying for our house. Our house. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I had paid every single penny of that mortgage, but somehow in his mind, it belonged to all of us equally. "I thought maybe we could celebrate," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "Maybe go out to dinner tonight? My treat, of course." Tyson sat up on the couch, stretching his arms above his head like he was preparing for something important. "Actually, Lucille, now that the house is paid off, we need to have a serious conversation." The way he said my name, not Mom like he used to call me in the early days of his marriage to Jovie, made my stomach drop. Something was wrong, very wrong. "What kind of conversation?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. Jovie set down her coffee mug and crossed her arms. My daughter, the little girl I used to read bedtime stories to, the teenager I worked overtime to buy prom dresses for, looked at me like I was a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. "Mom, you need to start thinking about your future," she said in that tone she used when she was trying to sound mature and reasonable. "You're 64 now. You should be thinking about retirement, about moving somewhere more appropriate for someone your age." "More appropriate?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Tyson stood up and walked over to us, his hands in his pockets like he was about to deliver a business presentation. "Look, Lucille, you've done your part. You raised Jovie, you paid off the house, but now it's time for the next generation to take over. Jovie and I need space to start our own family, build our own life." "But this is my home," I said, feeling like the floor was shifting beneath my feet. "I've lived here for 23 years. I just finished paying it off." "And we're grateful for that," Jovie said, though her voice held no gratitude at all. "But Mom, let's be realistic. You don't need all this space. You could find a nice little apartment somewhere, maybe one of those senior communities. It would be perfect for you. A senior community, like I was some elderly woman who needed to be put away." I had been working 2 jobs until last week, for crying out loud. I wasn't decrepit or helpless. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking now. "This is our family home. We're a family." That's when Tyson dropped the bomb that would replay in my mind for weeks to come. "Actually, Lucille, here's the thing. Great. Now go live in the dump. You've served your purpose." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, my hand reaching for the kitchen counter to steady myself. The dump. He was telling me to go live in the dump. I turned to Jovie, waiting for her to defend me, To tell her husband that he couldn't talk to her mother that way. Instead, she nodded slowly, like he had just said something perfectly reasonable. "You always were a burden, Mom." Those 6 words came out of my daughter's mouth so casually, so matter-of-factly, that for a moment I wondered if I had heard her correctly. A burden. After everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given up, everything I had endured to give her a good life, I was a burden. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I stood there, staring at these 2 people I had called family, feeling like I was looking at complete strangers. My legs felt weak, and I had to grip the counter tighter to keep from falling. 23 years in this house, 7 years of backbreaking work to pay it off, and they wanted me gone. Not just gone quietly or gradually, but gone like trash to be disposed of. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. What was there to say? How do you respond when your own daughter calls you a burden? How do you argue with people who see your life's work as nothing more than a completed transaction? Tyson was already walking back to the couch, acting like the conversation was over. Jovie was rinsing her coffee mug in the sink, her movements casual and unbothered, as if she hadn't just shattered her mother's heart into a million pieces. "We'll give you some time to figure out your arrangements," she said without looking at me. "But Mom, we really need you to start making plans, soon." I stood there in my own kitchen, in the house I had fought so hard to keep, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. The mortgage papers in my hand suddenly felt worthless, like certificates for a prize I was never going to be allowed to claim. But as I stood there, something else started growing alongside the pain. Something cold and calculating that I had never felt before. Because there was something Jovie and Tyson didn't know. Something I had never told them. Something that was about to change everything. I spent that entire night sitting in my bedroom, staring at old photo albums and wondering where I had gone wrong. The pictures told a story I barely recognized anymore. There was baby Jovie in my arms at the hospital, just me and her because her father had died in a car accident 3 months before she was born. There was 5-year-old Jovie on her first day of school, holding my hand and smiling that gap-toothed grin. There was teenage Jovie at her high school graduation, hugging me tight and whispering, "Thank you for everything, Mom." When had that grateful little girl turned into the cold woman who called me a burden? I remembered those early years so clearly. Working at the diner during the day while Jovie was at school, then cleaning offices at night after she went to bed. My sister Marie would watch her for me, and I'd come home exhausted, sometimes falling asleep in my work clothes. But it was worth it because Jovie never went without. She had the name-brand sneakers the other kids wore. She got to go on school trips. She had birthday parties with cake and decorations. I turned the page and found a picture of Jovie at 16, standing next to the used Honda Civic I had bought her for her birthday. I had worked double shifts for 3 months to save up for that car, living on peanut butter sandwiches and instant noodles so I could afford the down payment. She had cried happy tears that day, telling me I was the best mom in the world. The best mom in the world. Now I was a burden. Jovie met Tyson in college. I was so proud when she got her acceptance letter to State University, even though the tuition meant I had to take on that second job at the nursing home. I worked mornings cleaning office buildings from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., then rushed home to shower and change before starting my shift at Sunset Manor from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Weekends, I picked up extra shifts wherever I could find them. I was always tired, always sore, always worried about money. But Jovie was getting her education, and that was all that mattered to me. She was going to have the opportunities I never had. When she brought Tyson home for the first time during her junior year, I tried so hard to like him. He was studying business management, which sounded impressive, though he never seemed to study much when he was at our house. Mostly he played video games and complained about his professors. But Jovie was happy, and that was enough for me. "Mom, Tyson's really smart," she would tell me. "He has all these ideas for starting businesses. He's going to be really successful." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that my daughter had found someone who would take care of her the way I had tried to do. Someone who would appreciate her and work hard for their future together. They got married right after graduation in a small ceremony in our backyard. I had wanted to give Jovie a real wedding, the kind she used to dream about when she was little. But money was tight, the house needed a new roof, and I was already struggling to keep up with the mortgage payments. "This is perfect, Mom," Jovie had said, adjusting her simple white dress that we'd bought on sale from a department store. "I don't need anything fancy. I just want to marry Tyson." So I spent what I could on decorations and food, and we had a lovely little ceremony under the old oak tree in the backyard. Tyson's parents came, though they spent most of the reception talking about how small our house was and how quaint everything looked. After the wedding, it made sense for them to move in with me. They were both looking for jobs, and I had the space. "Just until we get on our feet," Jovie promised. "It'll be fun, like a slumber party." That was 5 years ago. In the beginning, Tyson did try to find work. He went on interviews, talked about opportunities, made plans. But something always went wrong. The job wasn't what they had promised, or the boss was unreasonable, or the commute was too long. Meanwhile, Jovie got a part-time job at a local boutique, but it barely covered her car payment and personal expenses. So I kept working my 2 jobs, now supporting 3 adults instead of just myself. The grocery bills doubled, the utility bills went up, and suddenly I was falling behind on the mortgage payments. "Don't worry, Mom," Jovie would say whenever I looked stressed about money. "Once Tyson finds the right opportunity, we'll help with everything. You won't have to work so hard." But the right opportunity never seemed to come. Tyson's job searches became more sporadic, his interviews less frequent. He started spending most of his days on the couch, playing games on his phone or watching TV. When I gently suggested he might want to consider taking any job while he looked for his ideal career, he got defensive. "I'm not going to waste my education flipping burgers, Lucille," he would say. "I have a business degree. I need to find something worthy of my qualifications." Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks just to keep us afloat. My back ached constantly from cleaning floors and lifting patients at the nursing home. My hands were cracked and raw from industrial cleaning chemicals. I hadn't bought myself new clothes in 2 years, and I was eating leftovers from the nursing home cafeteria most days because it was free. But I told myself it was temporary. They were young. They were figuring things out. This was what family did for each other. 3 years ago, when I fell behind on the mortgage payments by 2 months, I had to make a choice. I could ask Jovie and Tyson to start contributing to household expenses in a serious way, or I could find a way to earn more money myself. I chose the second option because I didn't want to burden them. Jovie seemed happy working at the boutique, even though it was only part-time. And Tyson was always stressed about his job search. The last thing they needed was financial pressure from me. So I started working a 3rd job on weekends, doing private house cleaning for wealthy families in the nice part of town. Saturday and Sunday mornings, I would drive across town to clean houses that were bigger than anything I could ever dream of owning, scrubbing toilets and mopping floors for people who probably spent more on lunch than I made in a day. It was exhausting, humiliating work, but it paid well enough to catch up on the mortgage and start making progress again. Every ache in my body, every moment of bone-deep tiredness, I reminded myself that it was for family, for our home, for our future. Jovie and Tyson didn't ask many questions about my extra income. When I bought groceries or paid bills, they seemed to assume the money just appeared somehow. They never offered to help, never suggested they might contribute more. In fact, as time went on, they seemed to expect more and more. "Mom, the cable's too slow for Tyson's gaming," Jovie would say. "Can we upgrade to the premium package? Lucille, the water pressure in our bathroom is terrible. We really need to renovate. Our bathroom, our house." Somehow, over the years, everything had become ours, even though I was the only one paying for any of it. But the worst part wasn't the money or the exhaustion. The worst part was watching my daughter change. The sweet, grateful girl who used to hug me tight and tell me she loved me had gradually become someone I barely recognized. She started talking to me the way Tyson did, with that same casual disrespect, that same assumption that I existed to serve them. Last year, when I suggested that maybe it was time for them to find their own place, Jovie looked at me like I had suggested something cruel and unreasonable. "Mom, we can't afford our own place right now. Tyson's still building his career, and my job doesn't pay enough. Besides, you'd be lonely here all by yourself." Lonely. As if having them here had been anything but lonely these past few years, feeling like a stranger in my own home. But I didn't push the issue because deep down, I was terrified of being alone. Terrified that if they left, I really would have nothing and no one. At least this way, I had the illusion of family, even if that family saw me as nothing more than a source of free housing and meal preparation. Now, sitting here in the dark with those photo albums in my lap, I finally understood the truth. I hadn't been building a family or a future. I had been enabling two people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient resource, and the moment that resource had finished serving its primary purpose, they were ready to throw me away. But they had made one crucial mistake. In all their planning and scheming, in all their assumptions about what they were entitled to, they had forgotten to ask one very important question. And tomorrow, I was going to remind them exactly what they had overlooked. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. After crying myself to sleep, I had expected to feel worse, more broken. Instead, I felt oddly detached, like I was watching my life from the outside. I made coffee in silence while Jovie and Tyson slept in until almost noon, as they did every day. When they finally emerged from their bedroom, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, paying bills online. Normal life continuing as if my world hadn't been shattered the day before. "Morning, Mom," Jovie said, though it was already past 11:30. She went straight to the coffee pot without looking at me. Tyson flopped onto the couch and turned on the TV. "Hey, Lucille, we're out of that good cereal, the kind with the almonds. Can you pick some up today?" The audacity of it struck me like a slap. Less than 24 hours after telling me to go live in a dump, he was asking me to buy him expensive cereal. I closed my laptop slowly and looked at both of them. "Actually, I need to ask you both something," I said. "When exactly were you planning to tell me about your plans for the house?" Jovie and Tyson exchanged a look. It was quick, but I caught it. The kind of look that passes between people who have been discussing you behind your back. "What do you mean?" Jovie asked, settling into the chair across from me with her coffee. "I mean the specific plans you've obviously been making, because yesterday felt very rehearsed, like you'd been thinking about this for a while." Tyson turned down the TV volume and shifted on the couch to face us. "Look, Lucille, we weren't trying to ambush you or anything. We've just been talking about the future, that's all. About what makes sense for everyone." "What makes sense for everyone?" I repeated. "And what exactly would make sense for me, in your opinion?" "We told you yesterday," Jovie said, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. "A nice retirement community, or maybe a small apartment. Somewhere you could make friends with people your own age, maybe take up some hobbies." And where exactly was I supposed to get the money for this new living situation? Because I just spent the last 7 years using every penny I earned to pay off this house. Another look passed between them. Longer this time. More obvious. "Well," Tyson said slowly, "we figured you could use your share of the house sale." "My share?" "Yeah. I mean, obviously we'd give you some of the money when we sell this place. It's only fair." I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. "You're planning to sell the house?" "Not immediately," Jovie said quickly. "But eventually, yes. Mom, this house is way too big for just the two of us, and the property taxes are only going to go up. It makes financial sense to sell it and buy something more manageable." "More manageable for who?" "For us," Tyson said, like it was obvious. "We're thinking maybe one of those new developments on the west side. 3 bedrooms, modern kitchen, better neighborhood." I stared at my daughter, trying to find some trace of the child I had raised. "Jovie, honey, do you understand what you're saying? You want me to move out so you can sell my house and use the money to buy a different house for yourselves?" "It's not like that, Mom." "Then what is it like?" Jovie sighed and rubbed her temples. "Look, you're getting older. This house is a lot of responsibility. The maintenance, the yard work, all of it. Wouldn't it be easier if you didn't have to worry about any of that stuff? I've been taking care of this house for 23 years, Jovie. I think I can handle it." "But you shouldn't have to," Tyson chimed in. "You've done your part. You've earned the right to relax, to let someone else handle the grown-up stuff." "The grown-up stuff," as if I hadn't been handling grown-up stuff since before he was born. "And you two would handle it by selling my house and keeping the money?" We'd give you a fair share, Jovie said defensively. Enough for a down payment on a nice little condo or something. A fair share of my own house. Mom, you're being dramatic. We're family. We look out for each other. That word again. Family. It seemed to mean something very different to them than it did to me. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard where Jovie had played as a child. The swing set was still there. Rusty now, but still standing. I had installed that swing set myself when she was 6, following YouTube tutorials because I couldn't afford to hire someone. Can I ask you something honestly? I said without turning around. When you look at me, what do you see? What do you mean? Jovie asked. I mean, when you think about me, about who I am, what comes to mind? There was a long pause, too long. We see someone who's worked really hard, Tyson finally said. Someone who deserves to take it easy now. And? Another pause. And someone who loves us, Jovie added, though her voice was uncertain. I turned around to face them. Do you see someone who has opinions? Someone who might have her own plans and dreams? Someone who gets to make decisions about her own life? Of course, Jovie said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you see someone whose only purpose is to provide for you. And once that purpose is complete, she becomes disposable. That's not true, Jovie protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Yesterday you told me I was a burden, that I should go live in a dump. Today you're planning to sell my house and use my money to buy yourselves a better house. How is that not treating me like I'm disposable? Tyson was getting agitated now. We're trying to help you, Lucille. We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone. No, you're trying to find a solution that works for you. There's a difference. I walked back to the table and sat down, feeling older than my 64 years. Let me ask you another question. In all these conversations you've been having about our future, did either of you ever consider that I might want to stay in my own home? But Mom, Jovie said, you can't take care of this place forever. What happens when you get really old? What happens if you get sick? What happens is the same thing that would happen to anyone else in that situation. I figure it out. Or I ask for help. But I don't preemptively give up my entire life because someone else thinks I'm too old to handle it. We're not saying you're too old, Tyson said. We're saying you're too old to be responsible for all this. Let us take care of the house stuff, and you can just relax and enjoy your retirement. By moving out so you can sell the house I spent 7 years paying off. By letting us handle the financial burden so you don't have to worry about it anymore. I almost laughed at the irony. Tyson, you haven't had a job in 8 months. Jovie works part-time at a clothing store. What financial burden are you planning to handle exactly? His face flushed red. I'm going to find a job. I have several promising leads. The same promising leads you've had for the past 2 years? That's not fair, Lucille. The job market is tough right now. The job market has been tough for 5 years, according to you. At some point, don't you think the problem might not be the market? Jovie slammed her coffee mug down on the table. Why are you being so mean? We're trying to have a reasonable conversation about everyone's future, and you're just attacking us. I'm not attacking you. I'm pointing out that your plan involves me giving up my home and my financial security so that you two can have a better life. And somehow I'm supposed to be grateful for this generous offer. We never said you had to be grateful, Jovie said. You just said I should be grateful yesterday. You said I should be grateful to even be here. Tyson stood up abruptly. You know what, Lucille? You're right. Maybe we should have been more direct from the beginning. Maybe we should have just told you straight up that it's time for you to move on. Move on to where? That's for you to figure out. You're a grown woman. You can make your own arrangements. There it was, the mask finally coming off completely. Jovie looked uncomfortable with Tyson's bluntness, but she didn't contradict him. She just sat there, staring into her coffee cup, letting her husband tell her mother to figure out her own homelessness. I see, I said quietly. So the timeline you mentioned yesterday about giving me time to make arrangements, that wasn't really a suggestion. That was a deadline. We're not throwing you out tomorrow, Jovie said weakly. We just need you to start making plans. Plans that involve me leaving so you can take over the house I paid for. Plans that involve everyone moving forward with their lives, Tyson said. You can't live in the past forever, Lucille. Things change. People grow up. It's time to accept reality. I nodded slowly, feeling something crystallize inside me. They were right about one thing. It was definitely time to accept reality. The reality that my own daughter and her husband had been planning to kick me out of my own home. The reality that they saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their comfort. The reality that they had never, not once, considered what I might want or need. But there was another reality they hadn't considered. One that was about to change everything. The argument continued for another hour, going in circles, with Jovie and Tyson becoming increasingly frustrated that I wasn't simply accepting their generous offer to uproot my entire life for their convenience. Finally, Tyson threw his hands up in exasperation. "Fine, Lucille, you want to be stubborn about this? Let me spell it out for you. This house is going to be ours whether you like it or not. Jovie is your daughter, your only heir. When you die, everything becomes hers anyway. We're just trying to make the transition easier for everyone involved." The casual cruelty of those words hit me like ice water. When you die. As if my death was just another logistical problem they needed to plan around. "Is that what you're waiting for?" I asked quietly. "For me to die?" "Don't be ridiculous," Jovie snapped, but she wouldn't look at me. "I'm just being realistic," Tyson continued, apparently oblivious to how horrible he sounded. "You're 64, Lucille. You've got what, maybe 20 good years left? And that's if you stay healthy. Wouldn't it be better for Jovie to inherit this place while she's young enough to enjoy it?" I felt something break inside me then. Not my heart, that had already been shattered yesterday. Something else. Some last vestige of hope that these people might actually care about me as a human being, rather than just as a source of free housing and eventual inheritance. But as I sat there, looking at their expectant faces, waiting for me to cave to their demands, I realized something important. They were making a lot of assumptions about what would happen to this house, about what Jovie would inherit, about what I could and couldn't do, and every single one of those assumptions was wrong. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my shirt, and walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept important documents. Jovie and Tyson watched me with confusion as I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the table. "There's something I need to tell you both," I said, my voice calmer than I had felt in days. "Something I probably should have mentioned before now." "What kind of something?" Jovie asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of official-looking papers. Property deeds, tax records, bank statements. I spread them out on the table like I was dealing cards. "The house is in my name," I said simply. Tyson laughed. "Well, yeah, we know that. But once you're gone—" "No," I interrupted, meeting his eyes directly. "You don't understand. The house is in my name, only my name. It was never transferred to Jovie. It was never put in both our names. Every single document, every piece of paperwork, every legal record shows Lucille Anderson as the sole owner of this property." The laughter died on Tyson's lips. Jovie leaned forward, staring at the papers. "But, Mom," she said slowly, I assumed. You always said this was the family home." "It is the family home. My family. The family I created and supported and sacrificed for. But legally, financially, officially, this house belongs to me, and only me." I could see the wheels turning in their heads, the slow realization that their entire plan was built on a foundation that didn't exist. "But I'm your daughter," Jovie said, her voice rising slightly. "I'm your only child. When you die, I inherit everything automatically." "Actually, no. That's not how inheritance works. Without a will specifically naming you as my beneficiary, the state decides what happens to my assets. And even with a will, I can choose to leave my property to anyone I want, or any organization I want." The color was draining from both their faces now. "You wouldn't," Tyson said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Wouldn't what?" "You wouldn't leave this house to someone else. Or to charity or something. You wouldn't do that to your own daughter." I looked at Jovie, this woman who had called me a burden, who had agreed that I should go live in a dump, who had spent the morning planning how to sell my house and use my money to upgrade their living situation. "I don't know," I said thoughtfully. "Yesterday, I would have said you were right. Yesterday, I would have said that of course I'd leave everything to my daughter, because that's what mothers do. But yesterday, my daughter told me I was a burden and agreed with her husband that I should go live in a dump. Mom, we didn't mean it like that, Jovie started, but I held up my hand. You meant it exactly like that. And you know what else? This morning you've been sitting here planning my eviction from my own home so you can sell it and buy yourselves a better house. So honestly, Jovie, I'm not sure what I wouldn't do anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear their thoughts racing, recalculating, trying to figure out how to fix this massive miscalculation. Mom, Jovie said carefully, we were just trying to plan for the future. We weren't trying to hurt you. No, you were just trying to get rid of me so you could take my house. There's a difference. Tyson cleared his throat. Look, Lucille, maybe we approached this wrong. Maybe we should have included you more in the planning process. Included me in planning my own displacement from my own home. How generous. That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Tyson? He struggled for words, clearly trying to find some way to backtrack without completely abandoning his position. I meant, we should have asked what you wanted instead of just assuming. Okay, I'm asking now. What do I want? What? You said you should have asked what I wanted, so ask me. Tyson looked at Jovie helplessly. This was clearly not going according to any script they had prepared. What do you want, Mom? Jovie asked quietly. I want to live in my own home that I worked 7 years to pay off. I want to be treated with respect by the people I've supported and sacrificed for. I want to make my own decisions about my own life, and I want to stop being treated like a burden by my own family. We can do that, Jovie said quickly. We can treat you with more respect. Can you? Because yesterday you called me a burden and told me to go live in a dump. This morning you've been planning to sell my house. And an hour ago your husband was talking about how much easier it would be if I just died already. That's a pretty dramatic change in attitude you're promising. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed, Tyson said weakly. And are you planning to be less stressed in the future? Because it seems like your stress level is directly related to how much I cost you and how much space I take up. And since I'm not getting any younger or smaller, I'm not sure how that situation improves. They had no answer for that because there wasn't one. Their stress wasn't about temporary circumstances or bad communication. Their stress was about my existence in their space, my inconvenient needs and feelings, my stubborn refusal to disappear quietly. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and clear. This is my house. I paid for it, I own it, and I'm staying in it. If you don't like that arrangement, you're welcome to make other living arrangements for yourselves. You can't kick us out, Tyson protested. We live here. We have rights. What rights exactly? You're not on the lease because there is no lease. You're not on the deed because you've never paid toward the mortgage. You're not even paying rent or utilities. You're house guests in my home, and house guests can be asked to leave. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. For 5 years, they had been living in my house, eating my food, using my utilities, and contributing virtually nothing, while assuming that eventually it would all belong to them anyway. They had built their entire future on a foundation of entitlement and assumption, and now that foundation was crumbling beneath their feet. This is crazy, Tyson said, standing up abruptly. You can't just change the rules in the middle of the game. I'm not changing the rules. I'm explaining what the rules have always been. You just never bothered to ask. Jovie is your daughter, he said desperately. You can't treat your own daughter like a stranger. I'm not treating her like a stranger. I'm treating her like an adult who needs to take responsibility for her own life instead of expecting her mother to provide for her forever. I looked at Jovie, who was sitting there with tears in her eyes, finally understanding that her safety net had never been as secure as she thought. The question is, I said gently, what do you want to do now? Because despite everything, despite the hurt and the anger and the complete betrayal of trust, she was still my daughter, and I was still willing to give her a chance to choose differently. But this time, it would be her choice to make, not mine. The tears in Jovie's eyes didn't move me the way they once would have. I had seen her cry before when she wanted something, when she was trying to avoid consequences, when she needed me to fix something she had broken. But these tears felt different. For the first time in years, I sensed that she might actually be seeing me as a real person instead of just as Mom, the eternal problem solver. "I don't understand how we got here," she said quietly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "When did everything become so complicated?" "It became complicated when you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as your financial support system," I said. "It became complicated when you married someone who has never respected me and you allowed that disrespect to become normal in our home." Tyson was pacing now, his face red with frustration. "This is insane, Lucille. You're talking about throwing your own family out on the street over hurt feelings." "I'm talking about setting boundaries that should have been set years ago. And you're not on the street, Tyson. You're two healthy adults with college educations. You can find jobs. You can find your own place to live. That's what adults do." "Jobs aren't that easy to find," he protested. "They are if you're actually looking. They are if you're willing to take something that might not be your dream job while you work toward something better. They are if you understand that pride doesn't pay the bills." I turned back to Jovie, who was still sitting at the table looking lost. "Honey, I need you to really think about what you want. Not what Tyson wants, not what you think you deserve, but what you actually want your life to look like." "I want things to go back to how they were," she said in a small voice. "When? When you were a child and I took care of everything? Or when you were a teenager and your biggest worry was which dress to wear to prom?" "Because those days are over, Jovie. You're 28 years old. You can't live like a teenager forever. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I meant I want us to be a family again. I want to feel like we care about each other instead of just using each other." The honesty in that statement surprised me. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the daughter I remembered, the one who used to tell me everything, who used to ask my advice, who used to say she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. "Then we need to start over," I said. "We need to establish a relationship based on respect and mutual support, not dependency and entitlement." "What does that mean exactly?" she asked. "It means you and Tyson need to find jobs and start contributing to household expenses if you want to continue living here. It means treating me like a person whose opinions and feelings matter, not like hired help. It means taking responsibility for your own lives instead of expecting me to provide for you indefinitely." Tyson stopped pacing and turned to face us. "And what if we can't find jobs right away? What if it takes time? Then you have the same problem that millions of other people have. And you'll have to figure out solutions the same way they do. Maybe you move in with your parents for a while. Maybe you get a job at a fast food restaurant while you look for something better. Maybe you do whatever it takes instead of assuming someone else will take care of you." "My parents won't let us move back in," he said flatly. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to insult and alienate the person who was letting you live here for free." The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken resentments and unacknowledged truths. I could see Jovie struggling with something, her face cycling through different emotions. "Mom," she said finally, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for calling you a burden. I'm sorry for agreeing with Tyson when he said those horrible things. I'm sorry for taking you for granted." The apology felt genuine, but I had heard apologies from her before, usually right before she asked me for something. "I appreciate that, Jovie, but sorry doesn't undo 5 years of being treated like a servant in my own home. Sorry doesn't give me back the respect and consideration I should have been receiving all along." "So what do you want us to do?" she asked. "I want you to make a choice. You can stay here under the conditions I just outlined, treating this like a temporary arrangement while you get back on your feet and start building your own life. Or you can find somewhere else to live where you can make your own rules and live however you want." "And if we choose to stay?" Tyson asked. "Then you follow my rules in my house. You contribute to expenses. You treat me with respect. You get jobs within 30 days, even if they're not your ideal jobs. And you work toward moving out and establishing your own independence." 30 days? Tyson's voice cracked slightly. 30 days. That's more than generous for two educated adults who have been living rent-free for 5 years. "And if we choose to leave?" Jovie asked quietly. "Then you leave. You figure out your own housing, your own finances, your own lives. And maybe someday, when you've learned to appreciate what family actually means, we can rebuild our relationship on equal terms. The weight of the decision hung in the air between us. For the first time in years, they were being forced to confront the reality of their situation without the safety net they had taken for granted. Tyson was the first to break. "This is blackmail, Lucille. You're using the house to manipulate us into doing what you want." "No, Tyson. I'm using my house to set boundaries about how I'm willing to be treated in my own home. There's a difference. It's the same thing. It's really not. Blackmail would be threatening to kick you out unless you did something unreasonable or harmful. I'm offering you the choice to stay if you're willing to contribute to the household and treat me with basic respect. Those are normal expectations for any living arrangement." "But we're family," Jovie said desperately. "Family shouldn't have conditions like that." "You're right," I agreed. "Families shouldn't need conditions like that because families should naturally treat each other with love and respect. But we haven't been functioning like a family for a long time, have we? We've been functioning like a charity case and a benefactor. And I'm done being your charity." I stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the yard I had maintained for over 2 decades. The grass needed cutting, the flower beds needed weeding, the fence needed painting. All tasks that I had been doing myself while 2 able-bodied adults lived in my house and contributed nothing. "I'm going to give you 24 hours to decide," I said without turning around. "Tomorrow at this time, you can tell me whether you're staying under my conditions or making arrangements to leave." 24 hours isn't enough time to find a place to live," Tyson protested. "It's enough time to decide whether you want to start acting like responsible adults or continue expecting other people to take care of you. If you choose to leave, you'll have 30 days to find somewhere to go. That's more time than most people get when they're asked to move out." When I turned back around, Jovie was crying again, but these tears looked different. Less manipulative, more genuine. "I don't want to lose you, Mom," she said. "I don't want our family to fall apart." "Then don't let it," I said simply. "Make better choices. Treat people better. Take responsibility for your life. Show me that you understand what family actually means." "And what if we try but we can't find jobs in 30 days? What if we try but we fail? Then you keep trying. And you show me that you're trying. And we figure it out together, like families are supposed to do." But the key word there is try, Jovie. Actually try, not just go through the motions while expecting me to bail you out. I picked up my folder of documents and headed toward my bedroom. 24 hours, I said over my shoulder. Think carefully about what you really want your life to look like. As I closed my bedroom door behind me, I could hear them starting to argue in hushed voices. Good. Let them argue. Let them face the reality that their comfortable, consequence-free existence was over, and they were going to have to make some hard choices about who they wanted to be and how they wanted to live. For the first time in years, the future felt uncertain, but it also felt like it belonged to me again. Whatever happened next, it would be my choice, not something that was happening to me while I passively accepted it, and that felt like the beginning of freedom. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious about their decision, but because I felt so awake, so clear-headed for the first time in years. I lay in bed listening to the muffled sounds of Jovie and Tyson arguing in their room, their voices rising and falling through the thin walls. Part of me felt guilty for creating this chaos in our home, but a larger part of me felt relieved that the pretense was finally over. The next morning, they were both sitting at the kitchen table when I came out for coffee. They looked like they hadn't slept much either. Jovie's eyes were puffy from crying, and Tyson looked like he'd been wrestling with something much bigger than his usual daily decision of what to watch on TV. "We've made our decision," Jovie said before I could even pour my coffee. I sat down across from them, waiting. "We want to stay," she continued. "We want to try to make this work." "Both of you?" I asked, looking at Tyson. He nodded, though he didn't look happy about it. "We don't really have anywhere else to go right now, and Jovie thinks. She thinks maybe we can fix things. This isn't about having nowhere else to go, Tyson. This is about whether you're willing to be part of a family that functions on respect and mutual support instead of exploitation." "I understand that," he said, though his tone suggested he understood it about as well as he understood quantum physics. "Do you?" Because yesterday you told me to go live in a dump. You talked about waiting for me to die so you could inherit my house. You've spent 5 years treating me like hired help in my own home. That's not the kind of thing that changes overnight just because it's suddenly inconvenient for you. Jovie reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Mom, I know we have a lot to make up for. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I want to try. I want to learn how to be a better daughter. Her touch was warm and familiar, reminding me of when she was small and would grab my hand whenever she was scared or uncertain. For a moment, I let myself hope that we could find our way back to something real. What about you, Tyson? I asked. What does trying to make this work mean to you? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I'll look for a job. I'll contribute to expenses. I'll try to be more respectful. You'll try to be more respectful to the woman who has provided you with free housing, food, and utilities for 5 years? Yes. Oh, that's a pretty low bar, don't you think? I guess I didn't realize how it looked from your perspective, he said, though his tone suggested he still didn't really understand. I studied both of their faces, trying to gauge how much of this was genuine remorse and how much was simply fear of having to fend for themselves. With Jovie, I thought I saw real regret, real desire to change. With Tyson, I saw mostly someone who had been backed into a corner and was saying whatever he thought he needed to say to get out of it. Okay, I said finally. Here's how this is going to work. You have 30 days to find jobs, any jobs. I don't care if it's flipping burgers or stocking shelves or answering phones. You need to demonstrate that you're willing to work and contribute. What if we can't find anything in 30 days? Jovie asked. Then you show me that you're trying. You bring me applications you've filled out, interviews you've been on, evidence that you're taking this seriously, and we'll reassess. They both nodded. Second, you'll start contributing to household expenses immediately. Even if it's just unemployment benefits or odd jobs, you'll contribute something every month. I'm not running a charity. How much? Tyson asked. We'll start with $400 a month total. That's less than half what it costs to run this household, so don't act like I'm asking for too much. Tyson's face went pale. $400? We don't have that kind of money. Then you'd better find some. Quickly. Third, I continued, you'll both contribute to maintaining this house. Cleaning, yard work, repairs, whatever needs to be done. This stops being a hotel where I do everything while you live here for free. Jovie nodded eagerly. We can do that, Mom. We should have been doing that all along. And finally, I said, looking directly at Tyson, the disrespect stops. Completely. You don't get to talk to me like I'm your servant or your burden or your problem to solve. You don't get to make decisions about my life or my property. You don't get to treat me like I'm invisible in my own home. I understand, he said, though he wouldn't meet my eyes. I hope you do, because if any of these conditions are broken, you're out. No second chances, no warnings, no negotiations. You're adults, and adults live with the consequences of their choices. The next few weeks were the strangest in our house's history. Jovie threw herself into job hunting with a determination I hadn't seen from her since high school. She updated her resume, applied for positions, went on interviews. She also started cooking dinner most nights and took over the laundry without being asked. Tyson was a different story. He went through the motions of looking for work, but his heart wasn't in it. He complained constantly about the jobs available, the pay rates, the application processes. When he did get interviews, he somehow always found reasons why the positions weren't suitable for someone with his qualifications. But he did try to be more respectful, at least on the surface. He stopped making snide comments about my age or my capabilities. He started saying please and thank you. He even helped with some yard work, though he acted like he was doing me an enormous favor. 3 weeks into our new arrangement, Jovie got a job offer. Assistant manager at a furniture store, decent pay, full-time hours. She came home practically bouncing with excitement. Mom, I got it. The job at Matthew's Furniture. They want me to start Monday. I felt a surge of genuine pride that I hadn't experienced in years. That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you. The pay is good enough that I can cover my share of expenses and still have money left over. Maybe I can even start saving for our own place eventually. Our own place. The fact that she was thinking beyond just getting by, actually planning for independence, Felt like a miracle. Tyson, on the other hand, was not handling Jovie's success well. "It's not fair," he complained that evening. "She gets a management position right away, and I can't even get a callback for entry-level jobs." "Maybe because she's actually trying," I said mildly. "I am trying. The job market is just terrible right now." The job market was good enough for Jovie to find something in 3 weeks. She got lucky. She got results. There's a difference. As Jovie settled into her new job and started contributing to the household, I watched her transform back into someone I recognized. She seemed more confident, more purposeful. She started talking about her plans for the future, about maybe taking some business classes, about eventually managing her own store. Tyson, meanwhile, grew more sullen and resentful with each passing day. He had managed to find a part-time job at a warehouse, but he hated it and made sure everyone knew it. He complained about his supervisor, his co-workers, the physical demands of the work. He acted like he was being forced to endure some great injustice instead of simply doing what millions of people do every day. 2 months after our confrontation, I came home from my part-time job at the nursing home to find Tyson packing boxes in the living room. "What's going on?" I asked. "He's moving out," Jovie said from the kitchen doorway. Her voice was calm, but I could see the relief in her eyes. "My buddy Jake said I can crash on his couch for a while," Tyson said without looking at me, "until I find something better. What about Jovie?" "Jovie can make her own decisions," he said, his tone bitter. "Apparently, she's got her whole life figured out now." I looked at my daughter, who was watching her husband pack with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm staying," she said quietly. "If that's okay with you, Mom." "What about your marriage?" Jovie was quiet for a long moment. "I think my marriage has been over for a while. I just didn't want to admit it." Tyson slammed a box shut harder than necessary. "Yeah, well, some of us aren't willing to just give up when things get difficult." "This isn't about giving up," Jovie said. "This is about growing up, something you're still not willing to do." He left that afternoon without saying goodbye to me, just loaded his boxes into his car and drove away like he was escaping from prison rather than leaving a home where he had been provided for and supported for 5 years. That evening, Jovie and I sat on the front porch together, something we hadn't done since she was in high school. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I think so," she said. "I think I'm better than okay, actually. I feel like I can breathe again. Do you want to talk about what happened between you two?" She was quiet for a while, watching the sunset over our neighborhood. "I think I stopped loving him a long time ago," she said finally. "Maybe I never really did love him. Not the real him anyway. I love the idea of being married, of having someone take care of me, but that's not love, is it?" "No, it's not. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. For letting him talk to you that way. For treating you that way myself. For taking everything you did for us for granted." "You were young," I said. "People make mistakes when they're young. I'm not that young anymore. I should have known better." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling into evening. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, you live your life. You build your career. You figure out what you want your future to look like. You become the person you want to be." "What about us? Our relationship?" I reached over and took her hand, the way I used to when she was small. "We figure that out together, day by day. We learn how to be family in a way that works for both of us." 6 months later, Jovie moved into her own apartment across town. Not because I asked her to, but because she wanted to. She wanted to prove to herself that she could make it on her own, that she could be independent and responsible. We have dinner together every Sunday now. Sometimes she comes here. Sometimes I go to her place. We talk about her job, her plans, her dating life. We talk about movies and books and politics. We talk like mother and daughter, but also like friends. I never heard from Tyson again, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that he moved back in with his parents eventually. I don't wish him ill, but I don't miss him either. The house feels different now. Quieter, but not lonely. Peaceful in a way it hasn't been in years. I've started taking those photography classes I always wanted to try. I've joined a book club. I've made friends with some of my neighbors. For the first time in decades, I'm living for myself. And it turns out that after all those years of sacrifice and service, I'm pretty good company. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never stood up for myself, if I had just accepted their plan to move me out and take over my house. I think I would have withered away in some small apartment somewhere, forgotten and discarded, wondering what I had done wrong. Instead, I learned something important. It's never too late to reclaim your life. It's never too late to demand respect. And it's never too late to discover that you're stronger than you ever imagined. The house that I worked so hard to pay off is still mine. But more importantly, so is my life. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.